Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, during the lockdowns, and for me as well, the lockouts, I found myself actually still with very little time on my hands to just have free time. But when I did, those precious few moments, I could turn to the internet as a source of information, entertainment, and comfort during uncertain times. The internet is an endless frontier for creativity, discovery, and free thought. While the reach of radio and TV is confined largely to within our own borders, Canadian creators throughout the past few decades have been charting new pathways online. Canadian media's landscape of the 21st century has been and will continue to be defined by their artistic endeavours. Regardless of one's background or prerequisite knowledge of their craft, Canadians have been reaching global audiences through the power of their voices, performances, and words. It's our duty as legislators to celebrate and ease their efforts in reaching the world. In no instance should we be working to limit their expression at home or abroad. We should afford the same consideration to Canadians who consume this content. The first 30 years of commercial internet has changed the manner in which we enjoy our entertainment. While the evolution of radio, print, and TV over the last century has taken place within the vacuum of Canada's telecommunications industry, there is no such restraint on online content. Canadians are more empowered than ever to pick and choose the content they want to watch, listen to, and read. The government should be working to encourage, not suppress, variety and choice within a new broadcasting reality. Regrettably, in Canada and in the year 2023, this bill gives us cause to rise to the defence of free expression and free choice. This debate should have all Canadians concerned, and it does. In a complicated world in which the free flow of information is more important than ever, I am pleased to speak once again on a bill, C-11, from the perspective of the majority of Canadians. When a government has been given every opportunity over the course of a year to do the right thing, is presented with Senate amendments that attempt to repair mistakes that were made and then reject some of those amendments, Canadians are given cause to reflect and draw conclusions on the intentions of this government. It's clear that the Prime Minister made up his mind from the very beginning of this process. He's not interested in the appeals of civil society, industry professionals, independent content creators, and the 92% of Canadians who access an uncensored internet for their news, opinions, and entertainment. From the beginning of the debate, they have been calling on this government to stop their attempts to censor their search results. Speaker, we must not embark down the road of censorship and algorithmic control. Canada is one of the most connected countries in the world. We are the model for what a free and open internet can achieve. In normal times, this would be seen as a net positive for civil discourse and the cultural mosaic, as any responsible government would embrace this potential. But that is not the case with this Liberal government. It has seen fit to impose top-down regulations of the worst kind on the one true international entity that reaches beyond borders and makes Canadian culture freely available to the world. C-11 applies CRTC regulatory power to the internet. It effectively empowers the Prime Minister, his cabinet, and bureaucrats in Ottawa to decide what Canadians see and say online. They would determine which material is given preference and would effectively have control over internet algorithms. The government continually claims that this legislation would have no effect on the performance of user-generated content, such as your typical cat video. But their actions are telling us a different story, and Canadians are picking up on it. Despite overwhelming public pressure to back away from independent creators and to leave the little guy alone, they have rejected a Senate amendment that would have protected content created by an ordinary individual. This amendment would have ensured that regulations only target commercial material. Canadians are rightly offended by this decision. To reject hard-fought protections for free expression in the 11th hour reeks of a hidden agenda. These fears are entirely justified. The Prime Minister has decided to impose his own personal brand onto the internet, and you have to wonder why. I would argue it's because even with his desperate attempt to control the narrative via the legacy media, and he's got to do this before 2024, he no longer has control over the message. As the relevance and appeal of traditional media fades, the internet has done more than fill the void. It has changed the media landscape forever. To consider just a few of these statistics, every day, 100,000 songs are uploaded to streaming platforms. 1.7 million books were self-published in the last year. There are now 3 million podcasts that put out about 30 million episodes, again, this last year. 2,500 videos are uploaded to YouTube every minute, Madam Speaker. And while decades-old media empires have been implementing strategies to downsize, alternative culture is flourishing. There are nearly 40 YouTube channels with more than 50 million subscribers, far above the reach of any newspaper or record label in Canada. We've also seen a shift among our young people. 86% have expressed a desire to become online influencers. In fact, it is our young people who are driving these numbers in large part. This Prime Minister has now ostracized 16 and 17-year-olds who are very motivated to vote in their first election, and a number of them are my grandkids. This is excellent news for them, for the future of independent Canadian arts and culture. But the problem, in the Prime Minister's view, is that not every ounce of this material will align with his government's opinions. We've seen this type of behavior before. Liberals attempting to restrict Canada Summer Jobs funding through a draconian value test. Employers were permitted to offer life-changing experiences to our youth only after attesting to uphold values the Liberal Party deems appropriate. Their 2021 platform promises to revoke the charitable status of crisis pregnancy centres because their life-saving work flies in the face of the Liberal Party's belief in abortion at any time for any reason. And the majority of Canadians, over 80%, actually want to see more pregnancy counselling centres, not less. They are so out of touch. Now they're attempting to control cyberspace through C11. Once again, Liberals are attempting to pick winners and losers. In effect, this bill works to extinguish this ambition for the next generation of Canadian creators. It will destroy the creative drive that makes film, music, and print materials so alluring. Instead of relying on a tried-and-true business model to promote their content to the world, creators will be forced to manicure their output to fit within the Prime Minister's CanCon ideal. And we've heard a little bit about that from my colleague. This is not what arts and culture in a free society looks like. The Liberals argue that this legislation is required to ensure more Canadian content reaches our screens. But at the same time, they're killing the inventive spirit that has inspired a new generation of Canadians to express themselves. In a piece in the Free Press, Ted Joya writes, and I'm quoting, "What we really need is a robust indie environment in which many arts and culture businesses flourish and present their diverse offerings. We deserve a culture in which there are hundreds or thousands of organizations doing audience development and research. Let 1,000 flowers blossom," he says. As colleagues on both sides of this House often say, the world needs more Canada. I wholeheartedly agree. Canadian culture is being expressed, not lost in current and expounding methods, but this can only be maintained through an open and free internet. Let's not limit our potential. Let's not turn back in time. Canadians analyze this bill, and they cannot help but conclude that it's an attempt to impose state censorship through the back door. Giving any government the power to manipulate online algorithms will not benefit Canadian culture. What is also clear is the threat it poses to freedom of expression in this country. The Liberals' time in office will end, along with that of all other future governments. Do we honestly want the government of the day, whoever it is, to impose its worldview over top of what we say and do online? As a proud Canadian, I certainly do not want that. But if it should pass, Madam Speaker, I'll end with this. I want Canadians to know the following. A Conservative government will appeal C11. Recognizing the richness and breadth of Canadian content in the internet age, we will require large streaming services to invest more into producing Canadian content. And we'll explain that to Canadians when we bring it forward, while protecting the individual rights and freedoms of Canadians. Through a Conservative approach to CanCon, homegrown talent will be able to compete on an equal footing with the rest of the world. When removed from the seat of power, I predict the Liberals will applaud a Conservative government's effort to repeal this legislation. Instead of trusting the future of Canadian culture to faceless bureaucrats in Ottawa, we will trust Canadians' ability to promote Canada to the world and make their decisions on what content they consume. We will allow 1,000 flowers to bloom.
Resume. I'm sorry. Questions and comments. The honourable member for Hamilton Mountain.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was very interested in the member opposite talking about the internet being this vast place, international, without borders, where you can find all this content. And I'm wondering if she honestly thinks that people randomly on the internet with all of this content find what it is that they want to watch, or does she think it's the platforms who are deciding what to put at the top of the feed, what Canadians, should watch next, what maybe appeals to you? Is it it's the platforms who are making those decisions. It's the platforms that are wielding that power, and it's our job as legislators to write laws to protect Canadians, including Canadians who work in the arts and culture sector. So that's my question.
For Yorkton Melville.
Madam Speaker, and I really appreciate that question, because the truth of the matter is that this government has already been trying to manipulate what Canadians see on the basis of their funding of the legacy media and their expectations of them. We are seeing this as well with Facebook. On this side of the floor, we've connected with them because, you know what, we're seeing changes in algorithms in regards to policy and politics. And so, of course, there needs to be those controls in place, but believe me, the last thing Canadians want, and certainly this younger generation that has found their voice want, is to see any government telling them what they can and cannot do, see, and create.
Questions et commentaires. Questions and comments? The honourable member for Saanich-Scofields.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And my honourable friend from Yorkton Melville. Again, I think we're unfortunately dealing with a piece of legislation coming at it from a perspective, and the honourable member for Yorkton Melville is a friend of mine. I understand that she believes what she's saying. I can't see it in this bill. I see nothing in this bill where faceless bureaucrats are going to tell Canadians what they can watch. That's not the case. This bill is about ensuring that our creators in this country will have work up against what is a monolithic, multinational digital media with giants like Netflix and Disney and Crave that are producing an enormous amount of content without a concern for the Canadian voices within and the Canadian artists within that content. C11 is just updating the Broadcasting Act to deal with that reality.
The honourable member for Yorkton Melville.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank my colleague for her question. Listen, the CRT is getting its marching orders from this government. Absolutely. And what they say to them will impact how the CRTC functions. And it's got its hands full, quite honestly, dealing with the dynamics around the legacy media at this point in time. I'm forgetting the last part of her question. Oh, the truth of the matter is there's all kinds of production going on in Canada from those large producers. If she goes and listens to the speech from the member from Saskatoon Grasslands, who was in the industry for 45 years, talked about all across this nation, and especially as well, of course, in British Columbia, on the island and in the Lower Mainland, where these companies are coming to Canada to make their movies, to make their documentaries. And we are gaining an incredible amount of GDP because of that influx into our own nation. And we deserve to be able to have the freedom as Canadians to use the internet in the way that it has been designed and is functioning now.
Questions et commentaires, l'honorable député de Rosemont-la-Petite.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank my colleague for her speech. Once again, though, it's a fear campaign and a disinformation campaign that we keep hearing from the Conservatives. People will be able to post what they want on social media. People will be able to watch whatever they want, and that's not going to change. The Conservatives, though, want to keep giving web giants a tax break where they don't have to contribute to Canadian content creation. Why does my colleague want to give an unfair tax break, which is unfair to Canadian creators, to big companies like Disney Plus or Netflix?
Seconds.
You must have missed the last part of my speech, so I'll just repeat it briefly. A Conservative government will repeal Appeal C11, and recognizing the richness and breadth of Canadian content in the Internet age, we will require large streaming services to invest more in producing Canadian content while protecting the individual rights and freedoms of Canadians.